Do not accept inexperience for weakness. Do not just sit there and go, I don't have that as a natural gift. We spend or waste so much energy focusing on the success of others that we don't spend enough energy focusing on developing our own success. Don't settle. Like, just don't settle. Don't think that you're at the peak of what you were meant to do, because you probably don't know unless you try.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like na 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 na. For my top 10, top 10, na 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 na. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Jay Shetty, and my take on his top 10 rules for success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Learn from experience.
There's a difference between inexperience and weakness. There's a difference, right? Like,
totally.
It's not really, you've not really explored something. It's just inexperience.
That's right.
Right? If you never started a podcast, like, I didn't know how to interview before I did my first ever podcast. Like, you just don't know, right? You don't practice interviews at home, or your parents never interviewed you, and you do your first interview and you're like, oh, okay, I like that. I learned that. I got that wrong. We maybe should have put the mic closer to him, and maybe the camera was in the wrong angle, and then you change it, right? And I think you're spot on that. Do not accept inexperience for weakness. Do not just sit there and go, I don't have that as a natural gift.
Yes.
And this is one of the reasons why I'm going into a soccer analogy here, sorry, but it was why I admire so many, a player named Cristiano Ronaldo, a great soccer player, because he's worked on things. And often people say to him, oh, it's not God-given for him, or it's not a gift he was given. But it's like, for me, that's what makes it more incredible. It's that he's worked on every single part of his game to become this complete player.
Rule number 2, utilize the stop, stop, swap method.
The second self-care tip that I absolutely love is how we talk to ourselves.
Right.
And so this to me is probably the biggest one. I'm doing a 5 Habits of Happiness challenge on Facebook. So we've had 150,000 people who've registered to take this 5 days of happiness challenge with me online. So every day I teach a new habit to my audience, which is loads of fun. One thing I was talking about is I looked at the definition of confidence. And I've never done this, but I love
Actually, I haven't either. I talk about confidence all the time.
Yeah, so I thought I'd look at the definition. And it starts off by talking about self-assurance. And you think, okay, yeah, that's what I imagine when confidence. And then it says, and it's the appreciation of one's own abilities and qualities, which blew my mind. Notice it didn't say receiving appreciation for your quality.
For yourself.
Yeah, appreciation of one's own abilities and qualities. Not the appreciation of others, not the validation of others, not the approval of others.
But that's why you can say, I have confidence in you.
Correct.
Or I have confidence in myself.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. And so the way we talk to ourselves is all over the place.
It's key.
When you're going out to a party, you dress up and you look at the person and you go, how do I look in this? And I'm like, no, ask yourself, how do I look in this?
Right.
Like, how do I feel in this? Or when you go to an interview, people say, how would people describe you in 3 words? It's like, why do we care about how people would describe me? How would I describe myself in 3 words?
Yeah.
And so for me, the way we talk to ourselves is such a big thing. So I have this mechanism that I love coaching people on and sharing with people. It's called spot, stop, swap. Oh, my British accent. Okay.
I want to do it with you.
Spot.
Spot.
A spot of tea.
A spot of tea.
Stop.
Swap.
Yeah. So every time, that was very good. That was very, very, and I'm not even that posh, but you made me sound really posh.
Yes, darling. Mary Poppins is what I have.
I love it. I feel like we need to hold a bit of tea and just.
Can we get a tea?
But spot, stop, swap. So every time you notice yourself, say something negative to yourself.
Ooh.
Spot it first. Start spotting that pattern, because that's all it is. It's a pattern. And we don't realize how much the words we say to ourselves have an impact. Like when you say something like to yourself, like, I'm starving, right? When you say that, guess what? Your body gets triggered into feeling like it's starving.
Oh my God, I
so
say
mind
that
and body
all the
are connected.
time.
So do I. That's why I'm picking on this example. Whereas what you actually mean is, I've been lazy. I haven't planned my meals. I haven't eaten for 2-3 hours. And you're saying I'm starving. Starving is the person who doesn't know where their next meal's coming from.
Right.
You're just hungry and disorganized.
Right.
And so when we say to ourselves, I'm exhausted, rather than saying, I'm going to make time for a nap today, or I'm going to sleep earlier today.
I'm going to bed.
You're saying the same thing.
Right.
But what you're saying is changing it. So first spot that pattern. One of the things I think a lot of people say to themselves is, I'm not good enough. I'm ugly. I'm not beautiful. She's beautiful. He's really good looking. He's got a great body. She's whatever. And if you spot that, where is that happening? It's usually happening when you're browsing through social media.
Right.
So now let's stop. Let's limit the time you spend in that place with that person, whatever it is that's sparking and triggering that thought. Let's limit that time. And then let's swap it for something better. So what am I going to swap that with? I'm going to listen to Ashley's podcast. I'm going to read this book that Ashley recommended called The 5 Love Languages. I'm going to go to a class that I've been wanting to go to, or a workshop, or whatever it may be. Like, you've now opened yourself up to swapping it. So spot, stop, swap. So start to spot the patterns, the way you talk to yourself that are bringing you down. Start stopping being in those places and times that spark that thought, because there's usually an alignment. And then swap it, upgrade it for something higher.
Rule number 3, don't settle.
Don't settle. Like, just don't settle. Don't think that you're at the peak of what you were meant to do, because you probably don't know unless you try. And so for most people, I feel like just don't settle, because I think we just give in too early. And don't settle for service. All right? It's like, that's the reason, that's the intention. It's like service is the one that's pulling you along. And so don't settle for service. The world needs service. The world needs your service. The world needs your genius. The world needs your passion. And you just don't know it yet. And the day you realize it, you'll be grateful that you went the whole way. As I know, I feel, I look back and I'm just like, God, like, I would have just been sitting there working in a corporate job and not known all the people I know now and connected with this amazing community and met you. I just wouldn't have had it. And so
if you didn't go for it.
If I didn't go for it, if I just settled that my service was this. So don't settle for service. Service deserves the best of you.
Rule number 4, find your meaning.
When I take a 10,000 foot view of who you are and what you do, it seems to me that your gift, or your real facility, is this facility for taking ageless wisdom, these spiritual precepts, these philosophical tenets and ideas, and translating them in an entertaining way and a digestible way for a very broad, mainstream and perhaps young, audience. Is that fair?
Sounds good to me. Yeah. No, there's a statement by Albert Einstein which kind of underpins all my work, and it's, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. And when I was exposed to the Vedas and all these spiritual texts that some of them date 5,000 years back, I was reading them and I was like, there is magic in these texts. Like, there is so much energy in these texts. There's so much weight and gravitas, and there's so much power. But guess what? Most people will never be able to experience it because it's in another language. And when I say another language, I don't just mean Sanskrit or Hindi or, Chinese. I mean another language of, it's speaking to a different age. And there's beauty in that. And I love that. And I appreciate that, but I could see that I wanted to try and see if I could explain these things to people that I grew up with. And I was always connecting with the person who grew up in London. I'm born and raised in London. I grew up liking anything an average Londoner is into. But I got so fascinated because of the way the philosophy was presented to me. And I felt a responsibility to want to do that for others. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good breakdown and 10,000 foot view. And I appreciate you saying that, because that's what fascinates me. That's where I get my buzz from, is how do I read, study, and learn so that I can share, support, and serve. And that's where I get my meaning from. Hey everyone, I have been reading a bit from my friend's book, Evan Carmichael, Built to Serve, and I wanted to share this with you. So, according to a study by Carnegie Mellon University, people with supportive spouses are more likely to give themselves the chance to succeed. They studied 163 married couples and found that people with supportive spouses were more likely to take on potentially rewarding challenges. Those who accepted challenges experienced more personal growth, happiness, and psychological well-being. Now, I can truly say that I've experienced that in my life. When I first met my wife, I was just starting out. I had never released a video. I hadn't created any content. And she was such an important part of feeling supported on that journey. So whether you're in a relationship, whether you're dating, whether you're married, or even if you're single, being supported by friends and a strong community is important. Built to Serve by Evan Carmichael. great book on how you can find your purpose and also on reminding us that we can all make a difference in the world. Thanks, Evan.
Rule number 5, focus on developing your success.
We spend or waste so much energy focusing on the success of others that we don't spend enough energy focusing on developing our own success. Imagine all the energy you're channeling towards someone else's success and just going, how comes they have that? And you could channel that and say, actually, how do I create meaningful relationships in my life? How do I create relationships that I'm happy about? Just that switch completely changes the course of your life, right? Completely. That's all the switch that we need to make. And that's the switch where your intelligence leads the mind rather than the mind leading the intelligence. When the mind leads the intelligence, the mind gets caught in that web of the mentality that, oh, I don't have enough. I'm not good enough. And that's one of the interesting things, that there's no limits on the amount of holidays you can take. There's no limits on the amount of billionaires in the world. There's no limits on the amount of millionaires in the world. There's no limits on the amount of successful people in the world. There really isn't, right? There's nowhere where it says that there will only be 100 millionaires on this planet. There will only be 10 billionaires on this planet. There aren't rules like that. They're not written anywhere. But we tell ourselves there are. We make ourselves feel that there are. So we constantly put ourselves into this victim mindset where we feel, oh, but that doesn't happen to me. That doesn't work for me, right? That's not going to happen for me. So we need to remove that. And that's the mind leading. When the mind leads, it tells us there's a limit on success. There's a limit on this. There's a limit on that. If that person has it, I can't have it. Now, that's not true at all. If your friend just went on a nice holiday to Mauritius or Thailand or wherever it is in the world, that doesn't stop you. Okay, you can't have their seat on the plane that they've booked, given. But there's so many other seats, there's so many other flights. And we've got to start recognizing that. We've got to start connecting with that. And that's where we shift from the mind leading our dialogue to the intelligence leading our dialogue. The intelligence leads with insight. Let me be compassionate towards myself. Let me be conscious. Let me care. The mind leads with impulse or ignorance and takes us down the wrong route. Imagine you've got two friends. You're sitting with two friends, right? One is the mind, one is your intelligence. Your intelligence will be stronger based on what you read, what you absorb, that tofu soaked in your intelligence, what you're taking in every day, what you're thinking about. That's when your intelligence gets stronger. It's the one that you feed, right? The one that you feed. Are you feeding your mind or are you feeding your intelligence? Ask yourself that question right now, right? How many of you are feeding your intelligence on a daily basis versus your mind? The one you feed more gets stronger. Right? The one you feed more gets stronger. The one you feed with more intensity, more absorption gets stronger.
Rule number 6, live in the present.
I think washing your dishes is something everyone does every day, or it's a common thing that people do. And you've got to realize that what you're doing is not washing the dish. Like, in terms of, that's not actually what you're doing. What you're doing is training your mind for presence. And the reason why that's so powerful is because most of us, when we're washing the dishes, I need to watch that Netflix show. I've got 30 minutes before, like, I'm going to sleep late if I don't see it. So now you're already trying to figure out what you're doing next. And that bleeds into the rest of your life. So now when you're finally on that, guess what? This is it. Everyone's going through quarantine and lockdown going, I need to travel. I need to travel. I need to get out. And when you live like that, when you're traveling, you'll be thinking, I need to do work. I need to get back to work. I need to get my career back on track. And then when you're at work, you're going to be like, I need to get away again. And that's literally the repetitive cycle that we're all living in. So when you're just washing your dish in a present way, you're not washing a dish. You're training your mind to be where you physically are. And the best way to do that is give it meaning, like you said, or do something that makes you more present at the time. You could, if you really wanted to, wash the dish and listen to your favorite song. You could wash the dish and listen to this podcast. You could wash the dish and do something that is good for your mind that helps you be more present and conscious at the time. So you may say, Jay, I don't have enough time to wash the dishes for 10 minutes, like one dish for 10 minutes. And I'm not asking you to do that. What I'm saying is, don't constantly be in a rush to get onto something you want to do, because then when you're doing what you want to do, you'll be in a rush to get onto the thing you have to do. And that cycle never stops. And I think that's the never-ending cycle that we're in, that we always feel we're ahead or behind. We always feel we're never where we're meant to be. And that's the root of all of our suffering in life, is that I don't feel I am where I actually am meant to be.
Rule number 7, train your mind.
I think that a lot of people are looking for peace. What do you say to those people who are just in search of peace?
I'm glad you asked this. So the tagline of my book is called Train Your Mind for Peace and Purpose Every Day.
Wow.
I believe that it's something that can be trained, and I believe it's something that you have to take responsibility for. The world around you is never going to be fully peaceful, ever. Even if there was world peace, you would still not have peace with a little argument with your partner or a little issue at work. Like that's never going to disappear. So the desire for everything around you to be calmed is a wishful thought that doesn't have an end. Whereas the feeling of wanting to create calm and peace within is very realistic. And the point is that that peace is always going to get triggered. And I think that's the mistake we make. We're looking for this perfect, consistent, never touched definition of peace. Whereas peace is something you're constantly training yourself to look for. So what I would say is that people should try and find the one activity they have in their day that brings them peace. It could be sitting and having their morning tea. It could be sitting and reading from a book they love. It could be having a beautiful conversation with their partner, whatever it is. Just have one activity a day that brings you peace. In my book, obviously, I talk about a lot more than that, but to find just something that brings you peace. It could be a mindset that brings you peace. So I really believe that all stress, pressure, or lack of peace comes from your mind being ahead of your body or your body being ahead of your mind. So how many times have you been in a scenario where your mind's like racing really, really fast and your body's like, oh, I just want to be in bed.
Right.
Everyone been in that situation?
Yeah.
Or you're in the opposite scenario where your body is moving really, really fast, doing a lot, but your mind's like, oh, I still want to be in bed.
Oh, that was me yesterday.
Right. So we've all experienced both. You
get into all this in your book, don't you?
Yes.
Oh, I can't wait to read it.
So the alignment of the two is what creates peace. Let's imagine I was running late today and I'm stressing. I'm like, I haven't thought about this and I don't know what it's about. And maybe I'm, all that stuff that we know that you'd be stressed about when you're running to work. And I'm sitting in the back of a Lyft or an Uber, or I'm driving and I turn up to the meeting.
Because you live in LA and you can drive.
Correct. So what I would do is I sit down and I breathe in for the same count that I breathe out.
Oh, yeah.
So I breathe in for a count of 4.
In through the nose, out
through the nose, out through the mouth. And I breathe out for a count of 4. Now, when you breathe in for the same amount of time as you breathe out, you're aligning your body and mind.
Rule number 8, take care of your body.
When I spent my time as a monk, I focused so much on the mind and we really pushed our bodies to extreme lengths. And then when I came back and I was having to live in this body, I was like, I want to serve, and that's why I want to take care of my body and mind.
Yes.
Right? Like that became the intention. I was like, I'm going to have incredible habits for what I eat and how much I work out and what I do with my body because I want to serve for the rest of my life.
There it is.
I don't want to die early because I was neglectful. I don't want to die early because I was neglectful and not caring and complacent because I felt I was still 22 when you still feel all of this
you can
naturally.
have the pizza and the beer. And
and so the soul is motivated by service. Like the soul gets energy from service, but the body needs activity like this, movement.
Rule number 9, open up to new ideas.
Basically, as the story goes, you developed a proclivity for seeking out interesting people to go hear talk, business people, sports figures, etc. And suddenly there was this monk who was going to be speaking. You were initially not interested in hearing what that person had to say, and you agreed with your friends to attend only on the assumption that you guys would go to a bar afterwards. That's
100%.
That's the
That
story.
is the story.
That's
That is
the
the story. It's true.
So let me ask you this. Let's talk about where that resistance came from.
Mm-hmm. The resistance just came from, I think, this skeptical version of me that didn't really believe there was anything beyond success. And that's partly why I called the book Think Like a Monk, because I think a lot of people look at that and like, why would I want to think like a monk? Like, why, but that's the point. Like, I'm trying to break through that barrier of, I think so many of us have been conditioned to believe that success looks a certain way and that happiness looks a certain way and that joy looks a certain way. And I was one of those people that was very skeptical about anything else outside of my space. Like if someone wasn't pulling up in their fast car or if someone wasn't pulling up in the best clothes, did I give them the time to really share their perspective? And I love the fact that the best moment of my life, that moment, up till that point, was also the most humiliating moment of my life for myself. Because I was being humiliated to myself. Like it was so humbling to walk out and then be like, you had it all wrong. And so I love that. I really celebrate the humbling that moment gave me. And it's exactly that when you hear someone speak and they speak about things that you never knew you were interested in. You never thought that you'd be fascinated by someone talking about service. But when he spoke about service, it just penetrated my soul and it just spoke so deep to my core in a way that nothing ever has, that I could hear about someone talking about making $1 billion and it wouldn't feel the same way.
What was it that he said specifically?
He was quoting another writer and he mentioned this phrase. He said, plant trees under whose shade you do not plan to sit. He said that the best use of your talents and skills is not to use it to become rich, famous, and successful, but to use it in the service of others.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is learn small things every day.
I think we've been told for a long time that you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. We've heard that again and again and again. And everyone's always like, get together with people you want to be like and stuff. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And a lot of my friends were saying, Jay, I'm always around people, but I still feel lonely.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that. Like people are like, I'm busy, but I'm lonely. I'm around people.
You especially hear it in LA and New York.
Right. Yeah. And you feel that people feel lonely. And I said, the challenge is we need to stop getting together and we need to start growing together. And what I mean by that is schedule one experience once a week with a friend where you're both growing together. Choose an activity that neither of you are pro at. So don't go to yoga class if one of you is a yoga enthusiast and the other isn't. Go somewhere where there's a level playing field. Why? Because you now get a fresh experience together. It's so good because it boosts your confidence.
And who cares if you're bad?
Totally. And because you're going together and you're both bad, there's no pressure. and my best memory of this is once for training, I was sent to Chicago and it was 80 of us who'd never worked together. This was when I joined a corporate company. 80 of us were sent to Chicago for training, but we were told it was Chicago, but actually we were 2 hours outside of Chicago in the middle of nowhere. And we'd be at training 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then at 6 p.m. it was too late to get into Chicago.
Right.
So we'd have to do something. And the only thing we could do is play sport because there were all these outdoor sports places. 10 of us every night would go out and we played volleyball in the snow. None of us had ever played volleyball before. I could pick up the phone to any of these people today because we all just had this crazy, unique experience together.
That's so funny.
And you're learning something together. And I think we underestimate this. Learning something every day is huge for your self-care.
Right.
Because you only feel good about yourself when you feel you're progressing.
Yeah.
So I started this really simple habit and it's learning a new word every single day.
Oh, I've been writing down new words in my notes. Yes.
Oh, I love this. Okay, amazing. So literally learning a new word every day. And you may say, Jay, I want to learn a new city, or I want to learn about a new culture, or I want to learn about a new cuisine, or I want to learn, but make it small and something you can achieve like in 3 minutes.
Right.
And so my word today was Meraki, Meraki.
Meraki.
Yeah. And what it means is to do something with soul or to create and leave a piece of you in it, in what you create. And what I love about that word is now I've shared that with you.
Right.
We're now having a discussion about it. You've now contributed to a conversation. Your self-worth gets boosted because you've learned something new.
Right.
You've proved to yourself you can remember and share it.
Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I want to know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week? When you watch a video and you just get motivated, the sign says you have a 35% chance of actually following through. That's not good enough, Believe Nation. We got to take action. But when you get motivated and then you create a specific plan of action for when and how you're going to do it, your number jumps from 35% to 91% chance of following through. And when you commit to somebody else, like posting down here in the comments below, that number jumps to 95%. I want to know your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week. Put it down in the comments below so you can follow through and I can celebrate you.
Is envy healthy or useful? It's useful at the beginning when you use it to start something, but it's not good long-term. Envy long-term can lead to depression, self-esteem issues, relationship issues. It can push people away. That's one of the things we forget about envy. Envy's like holding a hot piece of coal and wanting to throw it at someone, but in that point you burn yourself as well. It happens to us all the time. You're actually causing pain to yourself. It's like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die. That's what envy is, right? It's that. And so you're paining yourself, and what we don't realize is that envy is causing us more pain than it is the other person, and we're pushing our relationship away as well. So if you want to destroy your relationships, envy is great. It's a great component. It's a great ingredient. But for those of us that want to enhance, improve our relationships, it's definitely not where we need to go.
If you want 10 more amazing rules from Jay Shetty, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
The moment you think you can't be brought down, you will be brought down. So I said, start with compassion, lead with gratitude. And the third thing is focus on what will actually make you happy.